like I got ordinance 2015-1910, and I guess that is the one that Jack was talking about.
Yeah. This ordinance was brought before the council after study session last week, and as I mentioned at that meeting, our current regulations regarding junk vehicles are out of date and they don't reflect state law in terms of ridding cities of junk vehicles. So what we have here for you tonight is a new ordinance, new chapter 1808 for the municipal code that would bring us in conformance with the state law regarding junk vehicles, and it will provide us with a more powerful tool in ridding the city of junk vehicles. And we do have some properties that have that issue that we really haven't been able to get after because of the way our current codes are written. Now, there was a couple of very minor changes to the ordinance, just to point out, and I believe you received them tonight. One was on page 1 in the heading. It says an ordinance of the town of Pacific. That's changed to read city of Pacific because we're no longer a town, we're a city. And then on page 8 underneath, on page number 8, if the number is still correct, underneath 808090, in the first sentence under A, it states we're after the appeal hearing. So the appeal needs to be deleted.
I'm not following you.
Page 7.
Oh, he said
Mine
page 8.
mine says page 8 here.
Page 7.
so page 7.
Oh, there it is at the top.
Yeah, 808090.
Right.
And you should see the strikeout on that. So those are the only changes that we made to the ordinance, separate from the one that we sent you in your packet, and staff is recommending that the council approve this ordinance tonight. Any questions?
I did have one question.
Mm-hmm.
Under the section definitions, it has to meet at least 3 of the following criteria. So it's 3 years or older. So when it says 3 years or older, is that the year, make, model of the vehicle? Or is it had to have been sitting for 3 years?
No, it's 3 years and older. So if it's 3 years and older, it can be regarded as a junk vehicle.
And that's straight out of state?
If I recall correctly, yes.
That seems a little ridiculous.
I thought the same thing. I looked it up and that's what it is. 3 years or older. But it also has other criteria it has to follow.
But if it meets any of the 3, number 2 is the one that really is what matters.
Right.
You know, broken windshield, flat tires, but that's only one criteria, and that, to me, that should be enough. You know, the other 3 are so vague and up to interpretation that, you know, who decides whether its fair market value is equal to the scrap value? You know, I mean, that to me takes an expert opinion, not a city official opinion. And, you know, apparently inoperable, how would you know?
Well, that would, if you're doing the enforcement, that would be something you'd be writing up into any violation report why the city thinks it's inoperable.
So my question is that you can write a notice of infraction, they can request an appeal hearing.
That's correct.
They have to pay for that appeal hearing,
Yes.
do they not? So if they don't want to pay for it, then your decision is automatic.
That's correct.
Final. And to me, if you're not an expert in determining whether a vehicle is inoperable, I mean, what measures do they have to be able to prove to you before they have to request an appeal and submit, I believe, $1,000?
Now, the appeal fee, I think that the appeal fee is set by state law, if I recall correctly. And I can't recall what the state law fee is offhand. But that is set by state law. And the thing is, when you're looking at apparently inoperable, you know, lights, tires, safety glass, other safety equipment. Now, obviously, if both mirrors are broken off, that's a safety issue. if your tires are flat, kind of meets the criteria. Number two, that meets the criteria. So you can, there's visual clues of it. Whether the brakes are bad, unless you're driving it, of course, you can't really tell. But there's clues as to, in that regard.
I guess my concern is a lot of people are starting to collect older cars and their projects.
Right.
And, you know, to tell someone that because their car is sitting in their driveway and it's visible from the street, that they have to get rid of it because it's a public nuisance, it might not be running, but if they're working on it, the engine could be in the garage where they're working on it. And, you know, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is, you know, 3 years or older, well, if it's 25 years or older, you know, you can get it licensed as an antique vehicle, I believe. It's either 25 or 30 years. And, you know, number two is easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's obvious. You know, something can be inoperable but be in a state of being repaired or fixed
Right.
up or rehabilitated.
And that's why you have the provision of it out of sight. And for example, if it's in the garage, you're working on it in the garage, then the criteria doesn't apply. And if I was looking at, and some, like I said, some people keep a whole bunch of old vehicles stored on their property.
I get that.
So what do you do with that?
Right.
Because that starts to beget a blight on the neighborhood and start lowering property values. So.
And I understand that. I'm looking at the single
Excuse me,
vehicle.
Matthew, let's get a motion and then get into discussion here.
Okay.
Okay.
What's the council's pleasure?
Move to approve ordinance number 2015-1910.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve 2015-1910.
Can I say the wrong numbers again?
No, you also have to move to adopt the applicable RCWs that go with this too. If you look at the agenda bill, it has the motion with the RCW references you have to make also to go with this.
So,
Okay, you want to withdraw your motion?
can I add to it?
Withdraw your second?
Restate it, I'd like to restate it as ordinance 2015-1910, new junk vehicle regulations, chapter 8.08, and RCW 46.55.230 and 46.55.240.
Yeah, that's provided in the attachment.
As provided in the attachment.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to whatever Stacy said. I guess we need a roll call.
Yeah.
Well, we got
I
discussion.
want to discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion.
I could just speak to this first.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay.
These are changes in the state law. We don't have the ability to change the rules and how the state has written, and we can't
No,
amend
we don't
it.
have that ability.
And as far as, we have to trust that our code enforcement officer knows what he's doing.
I got a quick point of order on that. We can be more conservative than the state law.
Okay,
We can't, okay.
that's why we have the attorney here.
We can or
We can,
You cannot, you can.
We
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
stricter.
Be stricter.
Right, so,
Okay, thank you. That's all.
okay, my question to this is, let's say we go to Vic's house, and he's got a car he's working on, the engine's in the garage, the car's on the side yard, and the code enforcer comes and says, hey, you can't have a junk vehicle, it obviously isn't running. Does he have the ability, as opposed to going to, prior to spending the money on appeals, to come in and say, I am putting this car back together, this is my project, it's not a junk vehicle? Or are you going to make him go directly pay the fee for the appeal?
Well, the whole thing, when we're looking at these types of vehicles, and Councilmember Kay brings up a good question and issue. If somebody's rebuilding a classic vehicle and they have a temporary storage in the front yard, in the garage, or in the driveway, the first thing we would do is just ask them, what are you doing with the vehicle? If it's something that they're restoring, a classic vehicle, then we're going to take the view, okay, we're not going to issue a notice of correction right there. We're going to work with the person on trying to at least shield it or get an idea of how long it's going to be there, especially if they're saying they're working on a classic vehicle.
Right, but I guess my other point is, saying one man's junk is another man's treasure. So who are we to decide what is junk? I mean, it's obvious, you've got a car up on blocks, you've got a car that, you know, got weeds and mildew and moss growing out of it, or what have you. Something that's obviously a junk vehicle, but you've got somebody who's got grandma's car that was left to him that he has no intention of driving. You know, his seat might be ripped up inside, the windshield may be cracked. But how are you who are we to determine one man's junk from another man's treasure?
Well,
Why is it?
well, the thing is, that's always the challenge when you're dealing with code enforcement. And typically, what you want to do is make a first contact and just find out what the issues are. And also, the other thing you have to realize is that, like I say, one person's junk is another person's project. You have to realize we also have to deal with complaints that come in. And right now, we're a complaint-driven code enforcement. We're reactive, not proactive at this point, unless it's a clear violation of the uses in the
So
zoning
you're not going to be running
classification.
around to everybody's house and saying, hey,
No.
you're 5 years old.
No, if we go to Councilmember Cade's house and see the vehicle in there, yeah, we're going to go after him, definitely. No, it is complaint-driven right now. We're reactive.
I'll sign the complaint.
It is complaint-driven, so we'll take a look, you know, when you notice it, and like, for example, the one that this junk vehicle ordinance came into effect, and why it came up is that we have had a number of complaints on vehicles, and some can say that, oh, they're being restored or not, and they've been sitting there for years and years, and nothing's been done. So we have to act on the complaint and deal with that particular situation. So, you know, we do not, unless the council requests staff to be proactive, which will be providing more time to do code enforcement in that respect, it's still on a reactive basis. And like I said, we'll be contacting people first before we take any action, and see if there is an issue, we really can work it out first. We're not going to just jump on somebody's back right from the outset.
Will the code enforcement officer, like, take a picture and then go back in 6 months to reevaluate?
Well,
Somebody says they're doing a project car or something.
well, what it is, I guess, that's a good example. If somebody says they're doing a project car, and if we have somebody make a complaint on it, we'll take a picture and then we'll talk with the homeowner, and they're saying, well, we're going to have it here for a certain amount of time, and we need to do, because we're doing this work on it. We'll take a picture of it, then we'll check back in an agreed amount of time between the city and the owner of the vehicle, of course. And if it's still there, we'll find out, well, why, and if there's a valid reason, we'll still work with them. So it isn't, you know, we do realize there's a lot of people like to restore cars.
Okay, for example, like myself, I have a '66 Mustang sitting here, and I probably won't move for another 5 years. But it is not junk value. I mean, it's a matching numbers car, and it's just the way it sets right now. Unrestored, it's worth about $2,500. So you can't classify that as a junk car.
Based on the one criteria, definitely, you won't make it. So, again, we would have to still deal with the criteria.
Okay, well, then I'll license it, then what?
If it's licensed? Oh, well, if it's licensed, then, yeah, and to be licensed, it has to be road, it has to be ability to be.
What does it?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, we were talking about a historic one.
No.
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 The state doesn't
The state doesn't care as long as you pay for the
They
tab.
just want the money.
That's right.
That's a good question. That's something that we would have to,
You can put tabs on anything as long as you got the money.
So is that a loophole then?
The only thing is if you bring in a car out of state, then you have to take the
Yeah.
extra test.
one of the things that most cities look at is whether there's a current, if the license,
Well, I have to be
Places are
registered for
current.
2 years.
Yeah.
Nope.
not for
Not-
historical buildings,
not
not
for
something like that.
25 years
I
or
think
older.
it's 25 years.
Yeah,
I have a-
25 years or older, you don't have to run through business.
Yeah, so if it has current tabs on it, then we would, that would be something I would say, well, we don't really know, we normally wouldn't call that a junk vehicle if it has current tabs on it.
So I will tell you this much right now, you start screwing me, I'm gonna license it, and you screw with me some more, and you better get a better staff of attorneys than you've got now, because I will go after this city big time. I mean, you've got to have some reasonable criteria to this.
Yeah,
And
well, like I said, we have the criteria from the state law that we would look at, and like, we're not gonna, we're reactive and we're not going after people.
Well, I think this is too vague, is the way it's written, as far as what you consider a junk car. Anything can be considered a junk car that's 3 years old.
I don't like it.
Wasn't this written by the attorney?
Yes, this was written by the attorney, so, Councilmember Kate.
So, and I understand why we put it in place. I guess my concern is that we have our current intent, and we definitely, I like exactly what I'm hearing from you. That's what I want our staff to do, is work with our citizens, but I also know that once this is put in place, it's here for years to come. And the next mayor that comes in, that could be their pet peeve, and, next thing you know, notice of violations, they're proactive, and we have notice of violation showing up at people's doorsteps without them even knowing. And our intent, you know, on how we'd like to see it done in more of a reactionary manner, when we hear a complaint, do an investigation, determine if it's a neighbor squabble and it's an excuse to get, you know, some enforcement done to, you know, tit for tat type thing, or is there a legitimate concern?
Right.
And, you know, I have issues, you know, it's the single vehicle that could be targeted that bothers me. If someone's got 4 or 5, well, now they either need to get a salvage license, a business license, or, you know, put something where it's zoned for that type of activity, and I think that's really the true intent of this ordinance. We have properties where we have multiple vehicles being stored, all of which are in a state of disrepair. Like I said, we get complaints on them. We have a particular case right now that, you know, prompted us to review our ordinance, which is why this is before us here today, and I just want to make sure that, you know, our intent and enforcing this and pursuing it is what's been described tonight, so that future councils will have the historical perspective. So I'm hoping Amy does a good job of recording our intent, so that when they go back and look at it, when citizens come in and say that, you know, they're being harassed by the city, that, you know, we can, at least the councils can, future councils can look at it and say, well, what was the intent when we passed it? How did that council want it to be viewed? And I like what I heard, and I hope that's the way it continues.
Yeah, yes.
Well, I think there should be a vintage car provision. Yeah, I'm sorry. You get what I'm doing here.
My question for the attorney, can you go and look up how many vehicles a person can own before they have to have either a salvage or a dealer's license?
Okay, can do that.
And then the other one was, on the vintage cars, the rulings on those. Is it 20, 25 years?
25.
It's 25 years for a vintage car?
I think it is.
25 or 30.
Okay.
I would know that.
Okay, but
I have 3 vintage cars.
Yeah. I know my 91 Nissan is vintage now, since I don't have to have emissions anymore.
okay, so that's what's considered vintage?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I got 4 vintage cars. Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay. What's the council's pleasure? Oh, for the audience participation?
How about audience?
Yeah, I was just asking.
Oh,
Are you coming up now?
Got your hearing aid on?
Under those downtown St. Paul, 2nd Avenue Southeast, under those descriptions of junk cars, I probably have one or two. And I got a neighbor over, she don't complain. Anyway, I got a question on this. I forget, I don't know the exact number of years, but 4 or 5 or 7 years, if a car is not registered, retitled, or any activity on the title registration, the state deletes that vehicle from the computers. Now, let's say Jane and John Doe have a car and they don't want it, and it's 7 years or so outside that limit, and they move it out of their yard onto the public street. The city's gonna have to pay for disposal of that car, because they have no way of recording or tracing back to the original owner. How is the city going to deal with that situation? Thank you.
Do you have any answers to that?
No, I don't. I'm not,
I've never heard of
Junk.
that. I've never heard of that. I have a car that I gave to my brother that he never put his name 7 years ago, so does that mean it belongs to nobody now?
probably.
Oh, good.
Does he register it every year?
No. It just sits in his yard and he's painting it.
Okay, well,
Meg?
is there any further discussion? You got something, Jeff?
No. If there's any other questions?
Okay. I guess a roll call, Council.
Councilmember Katie Garberding,
No.
Councilmember Terry Garberding,
Yes.
Councilmember Cave,
Yes.
Councilmember Olivera,
Yes.
Councilmember Steiger.
No.